Hello, we're here at the Oval for the Kia Summer Smash Finals Day. And we've decided, while we're here, that we're going to do a bit of a review of the 2019 season. As we're coming to the end of the season, this is our last day of cricket this season. Let's think back to the start of the season, Sid. Back in May, we did our Women's County Championship preview. What were our predictions?
Well, if I remember rightly, I predicted that that Sussex would have a good season. That isn't quite how things worked out, Kent in the end won the county championship and confided. I admit I once again slightly underestimated them. I perhaps underestimated the availability of their England players in particular, Fran Wilson and Tammy Beaumont and Laura Marshall did their jobs, and Tash Farrant was really good. Kent did the business in the county championship. What about your prediction, Raf? You predicted, I remember, that Warwickshire would do well. It didn't do so well in the county championship, but there's a but.
There is a but. See, I think that I'm 50% right because they ended up winning the County T20 Cup. So do I get any brownie points for that?
Yeah, I think so, and I think it's really great that Warwickshire were able to, take home a trophy. At last, they've been there or thereabouts for a few years. They've come quite close in the Women's County Championship a couple of times in the last few years, they're a really nice team and they're a great team to report on and to cover. And I'm really pleased for them that they achieved that. The T20 Cup was a bit close this year. The County Championship wasn't that close. Kent won it with quite a while to spare, but Hampshire pushed Warwickshire all the way. But it was Warwickshire that kind of held their nerve at the end, and they needed to win their last game, if I remember rightly, and they did so.
Absolutely, yeah, and we had a lovely day at Beckenham, didn't we, watching Gwen and Davies make back-to-back unbeaten half-centuries for Warwickshire or Birmingham Bears.
Yeah, that was fantastic. That was the standout day of T20 cricket for me. She 2 unbeaten half centuries. She opened the batting both times, so carried her bat across all 40 overs that she batted that day. She was outstanding. She hit the biggest six I've ever seen in women's county cricket, and it was fantastic to see. And it was shows that there's still value in women's county cricket.
That was the great one, the great six that got lost in the block of flats, and somebody had to come down from the block of flats and retrieve the ball. It took several minutes, didn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And the other big highlight, I guess, across the county bit of the season would have been Women's County Cricket Day, which is the inaugural campaign launched by Richard Clarke. That was brilliant. That was a great day that we had at Guildford, watching Lancashire against Surrey.
Yeah, we did. And Surrey, had a live stream going for that one, and it was a really close game. It wasn't a high-scoring game, but it was definitely a nail-biter. And Surrey just the home side just missed out at the end, beaten by Lancashire by some great bowling at the end by Emma Lamb, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I guess just the campaign generally really sort of seemed to gather some momentum, and I feel like, in a way, just reflecting on that campaign, what it's partly done is given a bit of a voice to some domestic players, particularly on social media, that they maybe didn't have before. People kind of realising that actually the situation for women's county cricketers still in 2019 is very difficult, people like Cassie Coombs from Somerset coming out on Twitter and saying actually this is a situation we can barely, we have to wash our own shirts between matches and that kind of thing. And I feel like we've seen recently players able to actually kind of acknowledge that they're struggling sometimes.
Yeah, it's definitely an important campaign, and I think it has given a voice to a part of cricket that was underexposed, and massive credit to Richard Clarke for coming up with the idea and pushing us all through with it.
There's also, I suppose, really a running element of sadness, wasn't there? Back then, the end of the County T20 Cup, we thought that was the last ever women's county cricket. As it turns out, the ECB have decided that they are going to run the T20 County Cup for the next 2 years, but still a little bit of sadness about the ending of the Women's County Championship.
Yeah, I think as a fan, you've always, you become very attached to the players that you watch and the team that you watch. I've been watching women's county cricket for a long time, and it definitely felt sad to think that I wouldn't see those teams again. I came into this as a Berkshire fan. If I hadn't been a Berkshire fan, I would never have started writing about cricket in general. I feel very personally attached to it. But there's going to be some good things still coming next year. You know, we just had a chat here just a few minutes ago with Fran Wilson, the England player, and you know, we agreed that although, you know, we were all going to feel a little bit disappointed about county cricket, of course, because that's something that we've all been through. But there'll be lots of good stuff to come next year in terms of the standard of cricket played, hopefully.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about the future in a minute. I suppose we then had the internationals, and then the next big thing in terms of domestic cricket was the Kia Super League, the last ever Kia Super League, and we've had 4 years of that competition. I think it's been a really brilliant thing for the women's game. How did it kind of feel this time around? What did you make of the competition?
I thought that we had another good competition. I thought the standard of play was high again. We saw some fantastic individual performances. You know, we've seen players grow up in the Kia Super League. I thought it was really significant to see Freya Davis coming through as the leading bowler this year. You know, in the fourth season of it, you know, when the Kia Super League started, she was still, you know, she was part of the England Academy setup, but was very much on the fringes, and you know, no one would have heard of her outside of, you know, her own family, pretty much. Whereas, you know, now, you know, she's known all over the world. She's played, you know, a couple of games for England as well now, of course, but it's really her Super League performances that have, you know, that have made her, and you know, that's been an important achievement there for the Super League. And you know, we've got fans out. We had, you know, a reasonable crowd at Hove again for finals day, you know, of people that really cared about those teams, you know. And when the crowd at finals day, when the 100 was mentioned, the crowd did boo, but that was, you know, there's a positive there. You know, even if you're the ECB, there's a positive there that they were booing because they were disappointed, because they're attached to this competition and these teams, because that's what fans do. It's just like with Berkshire, fans get attached to it.
Okay, that's an interesting take on the 100 being booed. Yeah, I suppose as well, yeah, personal highlight for us, well certainly for me, would have been that 100 that we saw Danny Wyatt make at Arundel. We actually had a bit of a debate that morning about which game we were going to go to, and we ended up going for Arundel, and I think it was a good call in terms of being able to see a really punchy innings from Danny Wyatt. Just, you know, making it look really easy. But I chatted to her afterwards, and she said actually it hadn't felt very easy. She was really battling against it for the first few overs before she got into her stride. So it's always interesting when there's a bit of a disconnect between what we see as spectators and reporters and what the player is actually going through themselves, isn't it?
Yeah, no, well, from the boundary it just looked like she was just, you know, swatting the ball as casually as if she was playing beach cricket and knocking it into the sea 30 yards into the sea, when actually she was knocking it 80 yards over the boundary for 6. But it was one of the best T20 innings I've ever seen. It was fantastic. And you know, another player that's in the last 4 years really come on. You know, not just because of the Super League in her case. Obviously, she's come on partly because of, you know, the work that England have done with her, and she's also played in the Big Bash. You know, but you know, it shows that the importance. We've got really good standard of cricket going on with the Super League, and you know, that's been a massive positive of what it's achieved.
So in terms of looking ahead to next year, we should probably think about next season, what it might look like.
Yeah, what have we got to look forward to, Raf?
Nothing?
That's a little unfair.
Yeah, sorry, I'm feeling a little bit pessimistic at the moment. Yeah, so in terms of what is happening next season, we know that it's the end of the Women's County Championship, but we've got these new 8 regional centres of excellence that are coming in, and those teams will be playing each other in 50 over cricket. They'll be aligned to the 8 women's 100 teams, and yeah, there'll be players will be attached to a centre year round, we believe. What else do we know about those centres of excellence, Sid?
Well, not an awful lot in some ways. We know that there's probably going to be no overseas players involvement, and these are going to be purely focused on the domestic players, really. So, you know, they've said that the provisional calendar for it has got the Centres of Excellence playing a 50 over tournament in September, when there's going to be England games as well. England games are scheduled for September, and why not, when you look at the weather we're having today? But that probably means that England players, the top England players, are unlikely to be involved in that 50 over tournament as well. That's going to provide opportunities for more domestic players. So hopefully that provides some opportunity for some of those players that, of which there have been a reasonable number, obviously, that have missed out on the Super League, that will have an opportunity to play in a proper big competition and make a name for themselves. It'll be interesting to see how the ECB treat it. Really, it's one of the big unknowns here is whether it kind of becomes a sort of expanded Super Fours, if you like. Super Fours was the old kind of competition they had pre-Super League that was kind of a cross between a training camp and a competition. The ECB could never quite decide. At the beginning they made some attempts to turn it into a sort of spectator thing that people watched with teams, names that people supported, and then by the end of it had become Super Threes, and with possibly a boys team involved as well, and Team A, Team B and Team C kind of thing. And it'll be interesting to see whether the ECB treat the Centres of Excellence as proper commercial teams, where they encourage fans to come along, or whether they end up being kind of almost training games where they're being used for the purposes of just examining players and putting players through their coaches as coaching exercises, if you like.
Again, we think there will be some payment involved, but we have no idea how much or what the training commitment will look like for players. So there is quite a lot of uncertainty about that at the moment.
We have no idea, and it's worth adding the players have no idea either. We've seen in the past week, we've seen players taking to Twitter going, I don't know what's going on here, and it will be kind of nice to know what's going on because I want to plan my life.
Yeah.
You've obviously got some players that are students that are going to be able to kind of slightly breeze through this, to the extent that they pretty much know where their life is going, and but other players that have got jobs that they're thinking, what is going to be happening next year? How am I going to be able to manage my work situation, along with my cricket? And those questions are being asked, and the players don't have answers to them at the moment, and they really need them.
Yeah. So that's the Centres of Excellence. I suppose we should also talk a bit about the women's 100. Sorry, I think I've got the name wrong there. It's actually the 100 dash women's competition. Have I got that right?
Yeah, that's right, yes.
Okay, good. So the 100 dash women's competition, we have had a little bit more information come out about that recently, and we've obviously been getting the news through about the coaches, and we now know where all the venues are going to be for the women's teams, because they're going to be playing at different locations to the men's, and the most recent venue for the Manchester team was announced yesterday. It's going to be, those matches will be played at Sedbergh School, and then the final thing, piece of news that was leaked to Cricinfo yesterday, which is very interesting, is the women's salary bands. So it's going to be ranging from 3.5k to top salary of 15k, which isn't quite what we were expecting, is it, Sid?
Well, I think it's certainly fair to say that it's less than some people were hoping for. It needs pointing out that there will be there'll be four players on the highest levels, so there'll be 2 players at 15k, 2 players at 12k, but they will all be existing international players. You'd imagine. Yeah. The 2 15k players, you'd think will almost certainly be. You think that they're probably going to be overseas players. They probably won't even be England players, because you're going to want to tempt the best overseas players. The overseas players are going to be the one with the bargaining power there. If you're a domestic player, what you're looking at is probably more likely, 7,000 or 3,500. Now, we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that that's more than they've got for Super League. So it is different. It's also a change in approach from where they are with Super League, because what they've done with Super League is that they've kept it quite egalitarian. We understand that the England players weren't actually paid for Super League. They were just, told to do it as part of their England contract, so they didn't get anything on top. And then everyone else got, a standard base rate. There was a slightly higher base rate and then a day allowance for the overseas, and then a standard base rate for all the other people playing domestically. Whereas here they've chosen to, tier it quite drastically. So you've got a couple of people that are going to, do reasonably nicely out of it. If you're, on the top tier England contract and you get an extra 15k on top of that, you've had quite a substantial pay rise. But if you're a Super League player, you've had a little bit of a pay rise, but still, you're not going to be writing a resignation letter to your boss, and you're certainly not going to be getting in touch with your Porsche dealer asking when the next Porsche Brum Brum thing is coming in.
I guess
not an expert on cars, but
I think I suppose what we're trying to say is what we were hoping was that next year would see the start of semi-professionalism in domestic women's cricket, and it doesn't look like it doesn't look like that's going to be the actual outcome. It looks like it's going to be, here's a little bit of money, but that doesn't really equate to semi-professionalism, and that is quite disappointing. So overall, emoji summary of how we feel about next year. I just realised I pointed the mic at you and I didn't really need to.
And your emoji summary of next year, Raf?
Probably the same as yours.
Go on then.
Okay, so we're gonna go and
turn around
and watch some Kia Super Smash, Kia Summer Smash,
Kia Super Summer Smashed.
Kia Super Summer Smash.